we can at least get the two of you talking. Susan, are you on board?
I am.
Okay. It is
I also just sent Lily the link just to her DM, just to her a text to her.
Uh-huh.
She should be able to just click on it and join as a listener.
I can start listening, but it just has me listening anonymously.
Yeah, she's got herself set to listen to Spaces anonymously.
Okay, I know, but you can change that.
Right, and we're trying to get her to the settings thing to get her to so she can change it.
Okay, it should just be under listening.
Let's see.
Because I was listening anonymously from Santa Barbara, and then I switched it back last week.
Okay.
Well, I'm so happy I don't have these problems because I would not know what to do.
I worked at Apple, and I still can't always figure stuff out.
Let's see. There must be a way I can reduce the volume here. Yeah. You worked at Apple. I didn't know that.
Yes, I did.
What did you do there?
Well, I started out working there in college because my dad said I had to get a job because he put himself through school in the Navy. And so my friend's mom, her daughter was told she didn't have to work by her dad, so she needed someone to work in the summer for her,
Lily,
supporting her while she supported her boss.
Yeah, you're still on the phone.
And it was Apple Computer Inc. at the time, and her boss was Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And then I just was a floater every summer. They'd put me in a different department, and then I worked full-time there as the assistant to the creative director, Steve Shire, where I supported guys like Tom Marciano and Guy Kawasaki, all who went on to become, the backbone of what created Apple.
Wow.
Unlike others, I don't see Johnny Ive as that big of a deal at Apple. I mean, there are much more important people. He's to me, he's a little bit Barnum and Bailey. I mean, what has he done since the iPhone? Nothing. So the whole thing with OpenAI to me is a bit of a dog and pony show. Because I don't even think that his design work at Apple was, in my opinion, that great, because the iPhone looks a lot better now than it did then.
Well, I just hope you kept some stock from back then.
Oh, I kept it all. Well, I didn't. My dad did. My dad put it in an IRA for me. So when he passed away, that became a beneficiary IRA for me. But I can't, touch it without penalty at this point. I'm too young.
Sure.
But
You have to pay.
I, over the years have continued to invest in Apple. So I still think it's a great company. And I usually watch Apple as a barometer for the latest trends. And I remember when I was working for .coms, I remember Apple didn't get too, active in the whole thing with the whole .com thing. They kind of kept a low profile, and then it blew up, and they were none the worse for the wear. And I'm feeling a little I'm not going to lie, I'm feeling a little .com-y about this whole AI thing. There's just some weird stuff going on with the...
What are your concerns? I also share some concerns.
When you're paying $1 million to get some engineering geek to come work for you like he's a Major League Baseball player, that's concerning. I also think there's a lot of, just like the .com era, everybody's like, oh, this is the best thing, this .com thing, but nobody could really explain it. And AI has, and unlike the .com era, AI has some ethical issues for me as well, especially as a writer, because I've had my stuff, taken from used for AI.
Yeah, of course.
At least they credit me, but I have other friends that have had their stuff show up and it's not been credited. So, like, if you do a search for Jennifer Friedenbach, for example, what are the critiques of Jennifer Friedenbach? I come up a lot.
Yes, I can see that.
Or like, why is Kristen Evans controversial? You'll get an AI full of Susan Dyer Reynolds from The Voice says.
I can imagine.
So,
Well, we've been, a lot of the folks at Stop Crime have been fans of yours for a long time.
oh, thank you. Well, we're glad to be doing some work with you too, and the judges, and hopefully we'll get a judge report card going.
Yes.
And, Liz Lee obviously has been contributing a lot of great stuff, and working with you guys on cases that, need to be brought to attention, particularly in regard to the judges, because I, for years, have had a hashtag that says lenient judges. I don't think people really understand how big of an effect they have on the justice system, because, let's be honest, they hold the gate. So, Brooke Jenkins can scream and yell that this guy shouldn't be let out, but if the public defender is arguing he should, and the judge takes the public defender's side, and as you know, so many of them are former public defenders from the Jeff Adachi school, then it's very, hard to convince a judge that he should keep somebody in jail. And this latest killing of the young guy on Ocean, and I happened to see the actual horrific video of him.
That's the one about the guy who was on the bicycle?
Yeah. Well, he was actually killed at the bus stop, and the video shows him lying across the bus stop, just gushing with blood. Ready. After he'd been stabbed, and his girlfriend was trying to stop the bleeding, but you could tell he was not going to make it. But this guy that did that had a long record of violent crime. And one of my biggest topics is, violent crime and the mentally ill. There's got to be, something's got to give. These guys, like I wrote about Xavier Blue Wright, who'd even had kidnappings on his record, where he barred, young girls coming home from school from leaving a doorway twice. And has had trespassing. He's walked into occupied homes. He's had he's had drug offenses. He's had, other assaults, and then bashed in the head randomly my editor's husband, the Voice's editor, Lynette Major's husband, Ken, and, is now out and at Baker Place, and he's been seen in the marina where he, 150 feet away from Ken's house, where he's not supposed to be. Something is going to happen, something bad with this guy. And it's just a matter of time. And I think the city needs to start taking the people who are the victims' side and not the criminal side.
Susan, does he have a stay away order from that location?
He does.
Hold on a second.
Got it. Wow.
Yeah.
One quick question, logistical question. I see we're adding listeners now. I have my little space heater. I'm down in my basement, and it's 58 degrees here, and I just want to make sure it's not making too much noise.
I don't hear it.
Yes.
You don't hear it at all. Okay.
Only showing two speakers.
And Mike, you're okay? You don't hear too much noise here from me?
No, I'm actually talking with Lily on the phone, trying to get her on. We're about to do a speaker as well.
Shall we just start? And shall I start?
I would go ahead and start. Let me go ahead and do the opening for everyone listening. This is the Sunday brunch space from the Voice of San Francisco. I'm Mike Egge, the editor-in-chief. I'm here with editorial director Susan Dyer Reynolds and Frank Noto from Stop Crime SF. He'll be talking about that organization and its initiatives to improve public safety policy in San Francisco. We're also getting a board member of Stop Crime SF, Lily Ho, as well, but we're having some technical issues. We're trying to get her on board right now. So, Frank, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about Stop Crime and what it does? Okay,
sure. So, in a nutshell, Stop Crime is involved in, we push hard for public education on public safety, on justice and reform. We support policies that give victims of crime a voice, and we try to reduce crime. I want to make clear that I'm actually speaking for two organizations. One is, and I act as president for both of them. Well, one is Stop Crime SF, and we're a public education organization. And again, we're San Francisco residents who are dedicated to reducing crime and supporting victims, and we advocate for a strong and just and transparent criminal justice system. The other organization is Stop Crime Action, and it's an advocacy organization. So we can do lobbying, we can get involved in elections, and we also do public education. Most of our work on our judge report card, which I'm going to talk about in detail in a few minutes, most of that is done through Stop Crime Action. But when I speak today, I'm speaking for one or both of those two organizations. Lily is on my board. Lily Ho will be joining us, is on the board for Stop Crime SF. So some of the different activities we're involved in are, I mentioned the judge report card. Under California's Constitution, we have elections every 2 years for open seats on the Superior Court, and also for 1/3 of the judges on the Superior Court. So that happens in every county. And in San Francisco, it's about 20 judges every 2 years. But they're only an election for incumbent judges if they're challenged. If it's an open seat, of course, anybody who's an attorney, listed with the Bar Association can run. But for incumbents, it's only if there's a challenge, if somebody goes against it. Right. We can talk a little bit more about that. I think you've had John Trusvina talk to you about that too, about our judge report card. It's very difficult to run against an incumbent judge. And again, we can go into some other detail. We also run a program called Court Watch, and in that we encourage members of the public and our members to attend key court hearings on criminal cases. So they're going to be there when there's a hearing on a motion to detain a criminal suspect, or they could be there for a trial or a preliminary hearing. Because judges have enormous power. They can say, under the constraints of the law, they can say, we're going to let this guy who is alleged to have murdered someone or to have sold drugs to people or assaulted someone, we're going to let them go pending trial because we don't think that they're a threat to the public, and we don't think the crime is serious enough. So they have the right to make those decisions, typically on a motion to detain, i.e. keep that person in jail. And sometimes they will say, okay, you've got to post bond. You've got to pay bail. That is much restricted than it was just a few years ago because of Supreme Court decisions. So very few people have to post bail now, particularly if they're relatively indigent. So the judge will decide, we're going to let you go home and be on the streets, or you have to wear an ankle bracelet. You have to wear a GPS device on your ankle so we know where you are. If we restricted you to home and work, for example, that those are the only places you can go. You can't hang out in the Tenderloin and sell or buy drugs. Or you can't harass someone who you're accused of assaulting. So those decisions are in the hands of the judges. They have several constraints on them, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But we issue a judge report card. We survey attorneys who are in court frequently. The prosecutors, we ask the public defender attorneys, and then we issue the results of those surveys, and we also do our own research on what kind of record a particular judge or judge candidate have. And in the case of Stop Crime Action, we might endorse a judge or recommend that people vote against them. Very weird. So those are two of our programs. We also look at the Police Commission, which sets policy for the police department. And of course, we're going to oversee actions by other decision makers, the Board of Supervisors and the mayor, who set the budget for the police department, or set the budget for the district attorney, or set the budget for the public defender's office, as well as the probation department and other departments. So we looked at all those, and in particular, we focused on the police commission, which is kind of a neglected body that's very important. Guess what? The police commission has to decide on who the next police chief is going to be. The mayor can not nominate a police chief, but the police commission makes the decision.
So where do you think they are on that?
I think they're in the middle of, they've chosen a firm, I believe, and I'm not 100% sure about this, a firm that will give confidentiality to potential candidates who want to be the next police chief of San Francisco, and then they will make a recommendation, and they'll come down to 3 or 4 candidates, and then they'll choose from those candidates. The mayor, I think, gets the first say, but the police commission gets the final say.
Sorry about that.
Which is likely why Lurie was so intense about getting Max Carter Oberstone booted from the police commission, so that he'd have at least some people more likely to approve someone he approves of.
Absolutely. So 4, if I'm not mistaken, 4 of the members, there's a 7-member police commission. 4 of them are appointed by the mayor. 3 are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. We just recently had an appointment for Tiva Techie, who we at Stop Crime have worked with in the past. She was appointed to the police commission. And then the mayor asked that Max Carter Oberstein be removed from the commission, and he appointed another commissioner, Matty Scott, in his place. So he's got, if I'm not mistaken, the 4 mayoral appointees now are Larry Yee, the guy Clay, and I'm blanking on his full name, Matty Scott and Leong, and I'm blanking on his first name.
I can rescue you if you want.
Please,
Okay,
please.
First advisory, Lily unfortunately is not going to be able to be with us because I suspect it has something to do about where she is and about which provider is connected to Twitter or what, but she was never able to read my invitations to speak. And for whatever reason, when I would send, when she would send requests, the requests would not show up on my screen. So this is another reason for leaving Twitter and migrating to YouTube or another place for podcasts, but we can always do that in the end. So police commissioners, the current president is C. Don Clay, who's a retired judge, African-American. Cindy Elias, the former president, is still on. Larry Yee, Wilson Lung is another. He's a high-profile litigation attorney. He is another recent appointment. Matty Scott, and the 2 most recent appointments from was Matty Scott appointed by Breed or by
Larry? By Larry after he removed Max from the
right. So
Max Carter.
She was sort of the replacement for Max Carter. Matty Scott is an anti-violence activist based at the Bayview. The most recent appointee is Pratibha Techie, who is works with Tenderloin nonprofits. Currently, the Central City SRO. So she's an advocate for people who live in SROs in the Tenderloin, and she was fairly active in advocating for a couple of safety initiatives there. So she got that, plus the influence of Randy Shaw, who she used to work for, got her that appointment.
Pratibha, we work with closely because, of course, she and some other activists in the Tenderloin have worked hard to get more police oversight there. and have brought the issues to the attention of the media, and have appeared before the police commission in the past. So she'll be a strong advocate for doing something about drug crimes in the Ten Mile. She actually lives on the west side of San Francisco in Mariloma, and again, I think she'll be a strong advocate there. Wilson is an experienced attorney and prosecutor with a strong background. Maddie, I don't know that well, but you're right. She's been an anti-violence advocate since her son was murdered decades ago, I think, and has been active in the Black community and in political life in San Francisco for a long time, and is well respected. Cindy Elias and Kevin Benedito, they were the progressives appointed primarily by Aaron Peskin on the Board of Supervisors. And now Katiba took one of those Board of Supervisors seats. There's a strong majority that's pro-public safety.
Yeah, I can see that. That's pretty amazing if you think about it. Although I'm looking at the the term expiry dates, and we've got
Larry's term is going to expire
in 2026, but so is Maddie's, because Maddie is essentially taking over because she took over
Max's seat. That's right.
Max Carter-Urbisone's seat. She ended up being appointed to fill out the remainder of his term. So she'll be up for consideration again in 2026.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes. And just to talk about the police commission for a moment, one of the things the previous progressive controlled police commission did was they set out to say all kinds of traffic violations are not going to be enforced in San Francisco. State law on traffic violations is not going to be enforced. So some of them were kind of ridiculous on their face, and we got them to change those and get rid of those. For example, if you were a pedestrian and you walk down into the middle of the street, O'Shaughnessy, for example, that's one way of getting from the Sunset down into the Glen Park area. You could walk and sit down in the middle of the street, or two of you could, and you couldn't be arrested by the police. A bicycle could go through a stoplight, and it couldn't be arrested by the police. And a number of motor vehicle violations. So now that they refined those, that they were going to get rid of 17 violations, and they changed it to just 5. But they could get rid of that. Some of the violations are failure to signal for a left turn, for example. Another thing, and I can't remember if this is still in place, but it was one of the ones that was suggested, is if they see somebody who's in a car and is there for hours and maybe appear to be asleep, the police can't go and make an interaction.
So
all those,
the automotive equivalent of loitering?
Yeah, exactly. So they may have gotten rid of those. I don't have the 5 extant ones in front of me, but a lot of police stops result in a significant amount. I don't want to say a lot. A significant amount result in arrests for other things, and that in fact was the objection by Cindy Elias and her group. They said these are pretextual stops. The police use them to arrest people for possession of drugs or possession of illegal weapons, or to find that somebody is violating their warrant that they're due in court for the last year and they've evaded the police. We don't want that. we don't want those people to be stopped by the police for traffic violations, and therefore we're going to get we're not going to enforce those traffic violations.
There is, however, the side of it that the police commission, in its most progressive form, ignored extensively were cases I've written about many times, which is they result in a lot of stuff. Like a case I wrote about a guy named Keenan Shackelford. He was pulled over with no license plates in 2019. And he had a suspended license. So they asked him and his female passenger to step out of the car to conduct an inventory search before the car was towed, and they discovered a loaded semi-automatic pistol in the center console. The serial number had been removed, and they also found a dog in the trunk of the car, so they called animal care and control, and then 4 loaded high-capacity magazines in a bag. So, I mean, it's to say that, they pulled him over because he was black. No, they pulled him over because he had no license plates, but that led to much, much more discovery.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
But in those days, of course, under Boudin, Boudin said that he was, going to refile the case, but of course he never did. But the bottom line is that if you're pulled over under Brooke Jenkins and a bunch of cars are found in your trunk, chances are you're going to prison.
Yes. As I mentioned, they scaled back these violations that they don't allow San Francisco Police Department to enforce, these state laws that they don't allow the police department to enforce. And so there's only a few of them now. But as a result of the action and the discussion over traffic enforcement, basically ground to a halt in San Francisco, period. Police weren't not just enforcing these 5, they were also not enforcing a lot, and we scaled back, traffic cops. Clearly there are a lot for the police to do anyway in San Francisco in terms of the open air drug markets and other surging crime in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. And so they just pretty much, in most cases, you had a lot fewer traffic stops, period, of all kinds. And it declined by a huge amount. And I'm not, I don't recall the percentage, but it declined like something like 70 or 80%. And you had a lot fewer police out doing traffic stops, period. And as a result, it was hard to catch folks. Now, in the last year under Mayor Breed and under Mayor Lurie, they're beginning to increase traffic enforcement, and that plays a part in the reduction in crime that we've seen in the last 2 years. But we think the new police commission with the new commissioners ought to revisit some of this and see if we can get rid of the other laws that have been prohibited from enforcement in San Francisco. So I've talked about our oversight of government officials, and of course, we spent a lot of time on oversight of the district attorney back when Chesa was DA. Now we scaled that back because District Attorney Brooke Jenkins can be trusted to try to enforce the law. And we still send people into the courts as observers in order to see what the judges and the prosecutors are doing. But they report back that the prosecutors are much better and not scared of their shadow because Chesa Boudin is not looking over their shoulder anymore.
Interesting.
I guess my question would be, one of the most frequent questions I get is, when are they going to bring mugshots back?
My understanding is part of that is the interaction between state law and the use by local officials, but I don't really have an answer to you.
So, I can give you some insight on that. Every other county shows mugshots. Santa Clara County in particular, the minute, they've arrested, say, 10 gang members, by the 11 o'clock news, all their mugshots are up on TV. So there's absolutely nothing stopping Daniel Lurie and Paul Yep from putting up mugshots. This was something put in place by Bill Scott, when he was trying to be politically correct with London Breed, screaming racism. But it actually is nothing to do with that. It's, the criminals are who they are, black, brown, purple, pink, whatever. The mugshots show who they arrested, and every other county does so. So it is completely virtue signaling gone wrong on the part of San Francisco. And since, Bill Scott's no longer around, I thought maybe one of the first moves Daniel Lurie would make with Paul Yep was to say, hey, we're bringing back mugshots like every other big city and county. But no, they still don't. And I can tell you from a journalist perspective that covers crime, why this is so difficult. When I wrote the piece on Ed French, his killers were well known. And the whole thing was caught on video, but even knowing some, the people that I'd worked with extensively in the police department, it was like jumping through hoops to try to get those mugshots. And that should not be the case. A journalist should be able to immediately get the mugshots of people who have been arrested and are going to face a trial, as they already were in queue to face trial. Again, the murder was caught on videotape. They were, clearly had committed the crime. But the law is, not about whether you're convicted or not. When you're arrested, you have a mugshot taken. And as we know from all those sites with the celebrities' mugshots, they can be produced for public consumption, and they most certainly should be available to journalists. So shout out Paul Yep. I saw you the other night at the event for Dion Lim.
Exactly. I tend to think, I'm not sure what it is, but San Francisco agencies seem to be very, very stingy with the mugshots, regardless of certain policy issues. I remember talking with another journalist about a story he did about, and this is years ago, about a certain person who was associated with critical mass and the bike protests during that time in the 1990s. And he had established himself as something of a violent eccentric who had some past offenses and arrests for basically getting in people's faces and being obnoxious and violent for no reason. Like, for instance, he once there was a car parked in front of where he walked straight out the door of an establishment, and there was a car parked on the sidewalk in front of him, and that car offended him. So he just, rather than going around the car to cross the street or going to a crosswalk to cross the street, he stepped on the car and stepped over the car and to get into the middle of the street to cross the street. And there was a police officer there. So what the hell do you think they're doing? So the guy had at least a couple of mugshots, and the journalist in question, who actually is no longer a journalist now, had said he had to go through hell literally in order to get the guy's mugshot for the story and his past shenanigans.
Yep. Yeah, San Francisco has always been a little rough about that.
He's the right guy we were talking.
Interesting. The other side of that coin is oftentimes when the police have a suspect in a crime, sometimes they don't release the mugshot, or they don't release the footage while the case is still under investigation. What that means, practically speaking, is folks who have witnessed crimes by that individual are not going to show up and testify or make themselves available.
Yeah, exactly.
Liz Lay, Pisanetti has written for you guys, right?
No, this guy's been out of the journalism game for years.
No, I'm changing the topic here. Liz Lay. She's
Yes.
written
Yes.
articles for The Voice.
Yes.
Her son was involved. Her son was a student at Lowell High School, and he was on a bus, and somebody came on the bus, and now I can't remember whether the suspect was male or female. I think it was male.
It was male.
But threatened her son and made racist comments, and also threatened some of the other kids on the bus. And the bus stopped, and all the kids ran off and hid from the suspect. I think they brandished some sort of weapon, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, there was footage on the bus, right? There was video footage of the suspect, and they wouldn't release that for some reason, which might have helped find the actual suspect. And I never did have a conversation with the police about it, so I'm relying on what Liz passed on. But that seemed kind of weird.
Yeah, and the case remains open until this day. Whereas,
is it the police who are holding onto the footage or MTA?
I can't answer that question.
It's both. Question. They're both. Neither one has been willing, because the police could easily take just a snapshot from the video on the MTA, put it out, and say wanted or suspect. We see this all the time in other places, and almost always leads to an arrest. I can't remember the exact case, but it was Fremont. They put up a photo that was from a bus video, and within days the guy had been arrested. So there are real downsides to not producing an image of someone who is seen committing a crime, because you can't just say it was a man in a black hoodie and wearing a face mask. That tells people absolutely nothing. Right. And they know that.
And maybe he was white, or maybe he was Hispanic, or maybe he was Asian.
They don't even say that.
And he was 5'11".
They don't even.
That doesn't help a lot. So
now, with the SF, PD, you're most likely, especially under Bill Scott, the descriptions when I would be writing about something would come up, and it would say, in their press releases, it would say the 4 people that attacked, accused of attacking, were males wearing, all black and in a face mask and a hoodie over their head. Like, well, okay, great. So if I see 4 guys in face masks wearing all black and a hoodie, I should, probably call that in. I mean, it just makes no sense. I mean, give us a description. It's not the way it is in other counties. That's all I just keep repeating, because if San Francisco is going to claim this is, it's the rights of the person, etc., that's just simply not the case, because it's definitely something that every day you'll see on the news when they have a suspect in San Jose, in Fremont, in Marin, wherever. You're going to see a clip with a picture, video footage. Whenever there's, for example, a smash and grab in San Jose, they are on the news so fast their heads spin. And, in San Francisco, very, very few journalists have ever had, the guts to put people up on screen, Dion Lim being one of them. And it's just beyond to me that, beyond rationalization for this tough on crime mayor, quote unquote, to still be holding on to this antiquated social justice warrior. Well, then again, he is still paying Max Zabo $170,000 to be his spokesperson. I mean, this guy is the biggest left-wing, cop-hating. I mean, nobody has written more negatively about cops. If you go through his Twitter, everything is anti-law enforcement. And I can promise you Max Zabo is in his ear on this one, not wanting him to show mugshots and describe people.
My question is, does the police commission have a policy on it? And could they enact a policy that required the police department to do it if the police department don't take that action on their own?
Mike, do you know?
It's a question worth asking. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking at the crime dashboard right now for this month, and one of the interesting things that we've recently heard about quite a few assaults, particularly in near public transportation areas or in stations, etc. The Standard just had a story about one gentleman who lost his life trying to defend people from someone who was randomly accosting a couple of other people on the street. Another person got stabbed at a bus stop. And I'm actually looking at the dashboard for this month versus last month, or this month last year, and those crimes are down. But it seems like it seems to me that there's a increased awareness of it, or there's an increase in a different type of crime against the person that seems to be happening in the city. I don't know if anyone has followed that.
What do you mean? I'm not quite sure I follow you.
Well, in terms of assaults, I mean, there seems to be
assaults this year are down 13%.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing as well.
And the prior year, they were down from the year before. For 2024, as opposed to the previous year, assaults were down 6%. Now, violent crimes like assaults are not down nearly as much as larcenies. Larcenies have caved enormously. The violent crimes are down too.
The bars I'm seeing here is a lot bigger with all the property crimes, but in general, property crimes still dominate the.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question at all, and they probably always will and always have, and that's true across cities and states. But when we go after property crime, when we go after drug crimes, that helps in terms of reducing the amount of assaults and arguably homicides and rapes, because the folks who regularly commit property crimes are more inclined to commit violent crimes than the general public. It doesn't mean that the only people who commit rapes and murders are homeless people or people who are on drugs or people who commit property crimes, but certainly they're more inclined to do that because of they're part of the criminal underworld, or you can speculate all kinds of different contributing factors.
In other words, more activity, more stakes, more things to fight, more booty to fight over, that sort of thing.
Bingo. Yeah. If you're involved in property crimes, the chances of you being involved in violent crimes are increased some. And so we saw a significant drop in violent crimes, this year and last year, and really since September of 2023, shortly after, we got a new DA. It took for a while for the fact that there was a new DA in town to sink down, but that's had an enormous effect on the reduction in crime.
So we have actually a question from Robert O'Reilly. He asked, what is the latest outlook on getting public disclosure of case disposition information so voters have a way to understand which judges are doing what before the next elections?
Oh, God. Robert, thank you for having that question. It is absolutely crazy. One of my board members, Mark Hall, has written an article about this. Getting that information from the San Francisco courts is like pulling teeth.
Yep.
First of all, you have to have a case number or a suspect, and then you have to get the minutes, and you have to request the minutes. It may take them a few days to get the minutes, a week. It's not uncommon. At one time, they had an 800 case backlog. And then once you've got the minutes, you can say, okay, the hearing was on September 12th, so I want the transcript for that day. and I'll pay $200 or $300 or whatever to get that transcript, and then I can know what happened in that case at that particular hearing. Yeah. Other counties put some of this information online. San Francisco does not. The San Francisco Superior Court refuses to do that. I believe their main excuse is they told Supervisor Joe Longardio met with them to find out what the problem is with transparency there is. And they said, well, it's the budget. We don't have the money for that, but we're working on it. And they did, in fact, make some slight changes to their website. But no, getting that information is like pulling teeth. It's hard.
Mm.
And that means, doing our research on the judges is doubly hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. There's no real way for you. You have to be able to get those reports in order to be able to correlate the data for each judge. And
exactly.
How are you able to evaluate these people? And I mean, that's one of the major issues with judicial elections, I think, is that, for instance, in general, now it seems like the ability for people to render, public approval of judges or election of judges seems to be tightening up. Like, for instance, nowadays, I don't know how long it's been, but if you're a judge and you're up for a renewal election, it seems like you get automatically renewed unless a lawyer decides that they want to run against you. Is that the case, or?
That's exactly the case.
Okay.
Every 6 years, a judge can be susceptible to election, but that only happens if someone runs against them.
Right, and so if there is no, I mean, I realize it's kind of moot, but if no one decides to run against you, you just don't appear on the ballot at all.
Well, and it's a lot harder than that, because if you're a prosecutor and you decide you want to run for judge, that means you're going to have to go up before the judiciary for the 6 months before the election. And all those other judges are going to have some prejudice against you because you're challenging one of their fellow judges. Or
right.
Maybe you're up before the particular judge that you're challenging. So as a consequence, prosecutors who are in San Francisco just won't do it typically. Jean Rowland was a courageous exception, and she took on a judge. But it's very difficult. Even if you're an attorney who goes before the civil courts, the same thing applies, because you're going to have to go before those judges. And will your clients want you to go before those judges? So what happens is attorneys who practice in courts in Marin or Alameda or Santa Clara or San Mateo, they might possibly consider running, because they wouldn't be attacked by the San Francisco Superior Court judges wouldn't be prejudicial toward them. But it takes a certain amount of courage to do that, as well as a lot of time and effort. And it's worse. Well, we understand I believe it's Senate Bill 8 is.
Yeah, we had John Trespass come on a couple of weeks ago to talk about ACA 8. What's your take on it?
ACA 8, exactly. What that does is, for those who don't know, would take away your right to vote up or down on judges of the appeals court and the Supreme Court, unless there was a petition signed by a certain amount of voters.
It's ridiculous.
On the ballot.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the other issue I have with the justice system as a whole, and again, where, Daniel Lurie made tons of promises, hasn't delivered, is when I was with Mayor Matt Mahan of San Jose last Friday, not this last Friday, but the Friday before, at an interim housing site in San Jose, South San Jose. And, we were with Dignity Moves CEO Elizabeth Funk, and I was asking them how they keep everything around it so clean. There was no drug use, no drug sales. There was no tent encampments, nobody hanging around. And Elizabeth said, when I go to our site in San Francisco, it makes me crazy because all of that's happening outside. And I asked Matt Mahan why it wasn't the case in his city, and he said, because I won't allow it. I am about enforcement, and the chief is on board with me. He knows that I want enforcement, and that's just never going to be allowed here. And that's the difference. We allow in San Francisco what we call, which are very misnamed quality of life crimes to happen. And it's the broken window theory. If you let one guy sell drugs outside of a safe sleeping site or whatever, then 20 people are going to show up. And I have yet to see any enforcement, really, except for a couple of high profile, things that happened when he first got elected. I haven't seen any real progress from Daniel Lurie on, dropping the foot on this sort of bad behavior that we still see on a daily basis from J.J. Smith.
So that's the kind of thing that the police commission could absolutely get involved in. They could set policy. They could quiz the police chief. The police chief, appears before them 3 times a month, and the members of the public, can make their comments, and they can require the police chief to come up with some answers. Those are things that the police commission can do. And again, the police commission shares responsibility with the mayor. And in some cases, there are things that the mayor cannot do. Now, of course, he can lean on the police commissioners, but he can't take a police commissioner and say, you're off, I'm revoking your appointment, I'm going to put somebody else in. He would have to go through a big process to do that, as he did with Max Carter Overstein. But that's something that, San Francisco has this unique form that the city of San Jose or any other county or any other city does not have. We have 130 commissions, and no other city has that. And in the case of the police commission, they have unique powers that don't exist, that could hamstring other members. But I do think that the police department could increase that kind of enforcement. We talked about changing the policy on mugshots. That's something the police commission could do. Whether or not the mayor can do it on his own and order the police chief to do it without the okay of the police commission, I'm not absolutely sure on. But we have a guy who monitors a member of Stop Crime, who on his own, even before Stop Crime got involved, who monitors the police commission, Paul Allen, and he attends all those meetings and knows very well about what the constraints are. But we need to shine the light on the police commission, and I thank the Voice for helping to do that.
Oh, thank you. I just don't think that people are giving enough credit to what Daniel Lurie could do if he were a tougher mayor. I stand by the fact that, as much as I think he's an improvement over Breed in some ways, I mean, let's not get it twisted. He's got a whole lot of conflicts ahead of him, and probably many ethics violations will be filed in his first term that he didn't have before he became an elected official. But in that behested payments, which is, we should have a whole segment on that on another spaces. But what I just haven't seen from him, I see a lot of Instagram talking, and the city's getting better, and look how low crime is, and look who's in town, we're having music. He's basically doing the same thing he did at Tipping Point, and yet I do not see any changes in how the drug dealers and users are treated. They're continuing, except for maybe that they took their tents away, but it hasn't made them move on. So I'm extremely, disappointed with the lack of toughness is the only way I can put it. It just, I can't tell you the difference in persona when I speak with Matt Mahan versus Daniel Lurie. It completely, Daniel Lurie has no idea what he's doing. He's a lot of talk, whereas Matt Mahan absolutely has plans. He knows what he wants. He absolutely controls that city, in comparison to Daniel Lurie. Whatever power the mayor has, Matt Mahan uses it to get what he wants. I don't see that happening yet with Lurie. I think the person who probably is the best person in his very large 30-plus person, $12 million a year cabinet is Kunal Modi, who I think really does get it. And I have talked to him, and he sees the challenges. He understands the challenges. And we all know it's a long way away from fixing. But until you put your foot down on the drug use as well as the drug sales, you're going to continue to have situations where someone who has mental illness plus drug use gets into a argument at a bus stop and stabs a random bicyclist. This is just going to keep happening.
But that doesn't justify to folks who are south of Market or the Tenderloin. You can have anyone who has mental problems, whether they're drug related or not, can do those things, and the judges play a role in that. And I admit, it's difficult to make some of those decisions.
I sat in mental health court, and I can tell you, they don't work hard at all. They just sit there. They lose track. I wrote all about this when I covered Xavier Blue Right. They sit there with piles and piles of stuff. All of the binders on the judge's desk, and they're all getting lost. They're not sure which guy they're on. The day I was there for Xavier, and he was number 22 out of, I think, 30 cases on a Wednesday, and they just flew through them. And there was a victim there, and the public defender came back and just very casually told her, oh yeah, they're releasing him. And she said, in San Francisco? And he said, yeah, in San Francisco. She said, where? He said, oh, I'm not really sure. I think Baker Places. And she ran out of there crying, and he just went back and sat down and said, where are we? So it's just a very bad system. The whole mental health court is a joke, because in general, if you read, as I have over the years covering these cases, mentally ill people do not tend to be violent just because they're mentally ill. The violent mentally ill are pretty rare. And in every case I've covered, including Xavier Blue Right, if you look at their record, there is drugs in their record.
Yeah. This is a thing that I'm seeing, is that we're seeing more. We seem to be seeing an uptick in coverage of assaults that are related to someone who's on drugs.
100%.
Or at least fits the profile of someone who would be on drugs.
Well, and if you look, what I always do is look at their, I grab their record, and I look at their past record. And in every single case, there has never been a case of someone who harmed someone who the courts deemed mentally ill, when I looked back at their record, who did not have drug use, drug sales, and drug use in their, maybe not always drug sales, but there is a lot of situations where these people have sold drugs as well as used drugs, but all of them have
dealers to be lookouts or to be
correct. And they've all had possession of drugs and drug paraphernalia. So that's where you get into a slippery slope, where mental illness is not alone going to make someone violent. It's just not, unless it's, extreme schizophrenia or something. But that's very rare. The cases of mental illness where violence like this occurs. And when I look, by the way, at this guy's record, of course, he had a long violent past, and it included drugs.
Yeah.
And we're not taking that seriously. And that's how we got down the slippery slope with Chesa Boudin, with these guys like Patrick Thompson that, was running around stabbing people and had been doing so for a very long time, and was in and out of these drug rehab, mental illness, boot camps, supposed, babysitting centers, where he would just walk out and stab someone. And those are the scariest ones because you just don't see it coming. And unfortunately for this man who was trying to defend these people, he lost his life. And unfortunately, I'll never get it out of my head because someone I know, one of my followers who I follow on Twitter, happened to be right at the scene and took the video of him at the bus stop, bleeding out. And it was horrific. And I'll never, ever be able to get that out of my head. But that's not due to mental illness. That's due to drugs. I can promise you there was a lot of drugs involved because it just too much. I mean, and we need to take that seriously. I mean, Xavier Blue Wright is out and has been caught in the marina 150 feet away from Ken Major, his victim, and he's not supposed to be. He's at Baker Places again. And, that's an open, they can come and go. I just don't get it. For the first 30 days, he was supposed to stay there, but within a week, he was back in the marina. So this is just, really asking for trouble. And I just don't see how Daniel Lurie hasn't gotten his act together on this.
And of course, since I suspect many people in our audience already know this, but Baker Places was recently caught up in a bit of a scandal over how their facilities are run and how they use their money. That they essentially had to be sort of given the equivalent of bankruptcy, that people had to be brought in and sort of reorganize the place.
Yeah, I mean, they're all a joke, all those places.
So the people who are sentencing the defendants who go through the mental health court system are judges. So Mayor Lurie doesn't have any control over that. The Board of Supervisors doesn't have control over that. The prosecutor can argue in those cases, but again, Brooke Jenkins doesn't have control over that. It's primarily judges, and that is pretty much invisible to the courts,
right?
To the public.
And they do have better. I will say they do have better judges in Santa Clara County for the most part. If the down in Santa Clara County, if the public defender is asking for someone to be released, and the prosecutor says no, we think that this guy needs to be kept, that 8 out of 10 times they end up being kept in jail. So yes, judges do have a lot to do with that, but the mayor does have the power to. I mean, he does a lot of Instagrams. You'd think that he could start to, if he had a backbone. I would like to see less Instagrams about the Deaden Company and more Instagrams about, we need judges to hold, these people who are randomly stabbing people at bus stops somewhere else other than letting them loose on our streets. There has to be.
Even that's only a bully pulpit, isn't it?
Well, it's a bully pulpit, but at least it's, putting the word out there about what he wants. And I just don't feel like the city has any willpower whatsoever to change what's happening. I mean, and by the way, the mental health court thing could be changed. There are things that could be done. The whole thing about diversion, and in the column that I wrote, that proved that Chesa Boudin hadn't tracked a single person in diversion, and he was sending everybody from murder suspects to drug dealers to diversion, and then hadn't tracked a single one. All of that could be changed. These are not state; these are San Francisco, and all of it could be changed to be more rigid.
My understanding is San Francisco's approach to diversion has been very different than most other counties.
100%.
I think you're absolutely right, and the responsibility lies primarily on the judges. So the probation department, which is under Mayor Lurie's nominal control, has some say in that too. But it's a pretty opaque system, and I'm glad that you've written on this. In fact, if you don't mind, Susan, I'd like to talk to you offline about this and some of the other issues, if that's possible.
Yes,
maybe
of course.
I could give you a call this week.
Yeah, definitely.
There's one issue that's happening right now that I hesitate to magnify a lot because we haven't done our own investigation, but I'll tell you what I know. There's a lot of attention on the part of the mission around Shotwell because of prostitution issues.
I was about to mention that if you look at the dashboard for this month, that's the only area where where this year's stats have gone up, and they've gone up significantly, is human trafficking sex act.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I've always sort of written that off as, it's a really small sample size because you're talking about, you're looking at this year, you've got only, 13 as opposed to the prior year 8. Right. And in human trafficking, involuntary servitude, it's only one case. But maybe there's something there. But the problem they've had is they've got this one guy, and I think the suspect's name, he's gone by several different names, but Melendez is the name that he was charged with, I believe.
What's his first name?
I think it's Jose Melendez, but I'm not 100% sure on the first name. And he goes by another name. I've got that in another email, but I don't want to pause for a few minutes to find that out. But in any case, he was the neighbors reported that he's vandalized some of them. He's threatened people, and he's committed arsons.
Oh, this guy I'm looking at his record right now. He has a really long record.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Vandalism, $5,000 or more. Contempt of court, assault with a deadly weapon, assault with deadly force likely to cause great bodily injury, vandalism again, assault with a deadly weapon again, vandalism again, all over $5,000, resisting, obstructing police, battery on a police officer, resisting officers' attempts to prevent public officer from performing their duty, obstructing and resisting arrest, obstructing executive officer. So, yeah, this is all, by the way, in 2025.
Right. So the most recent allegations by the neighbors are that he set 2 arsons. He started a fire under a car. The car exploded.
Oh my God!
In front of the house filled with children, and so the neighbors are up in arms, and they tell us that they've. They talked to the police chief, and I forget the station chief. I forget her name. And mission station, and they sent an email to the mayor and to the mayor's office, asked for a meeting, and they haven't gotten a reply yet. It's only been 3 or 4 days, but they're really, really upset. I can't vouch for any of those facts, but we're trying to, as we usually do, we try to work with victims and folks who are impacted and try to get them to talk to the appropriate people. So we put them in touch with the DA's office, and they're already in touch with the police department, and they weren't satisfied with that. And we're going to try to get them in touch with the mayor's office. But those are things that are real things. Even if the homicide rate is down, even if assaults are down, even if larcenies are down, it doesn't mean that they are not happening. And we do need a police response. So now I realize, the police are down by more than 500 officers, and that may be getting even worse in the next few months as people retire. But nonetheless, people still have an obligation to respond. So those are some of the issues that we're talking about. And I can talk to you again about your thoughts on that offline, Susan, if you're willing.
Yes, definitely.
May I make a pitch?
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can use contributions. We're in need of help to do this research. We have one fellow who acts on staff and does some research as a professional, but most of our stuff is done by volunteers, and we need to pay the bills. So please go to stopcrimesf.com, stopcrimesf.com, or stopcrimeaction.com, and make a contribution. Join us, on our email list. We definitely can use your help for those who are listening out there.
Let me ask you something. I think a couple of the factors that need to be when you're looking at the composition of the bench is that the first stage in a judge's career is they get appointed generally by the governor's office, but there's generally a commission of people that work underneath the governor that sort of vet potential candidates. Correct?
The governor does all the appointing, but it goes through two different bodies, at least two different. One is the JNE, and that stands for Judicial Evaluation, and the other one is the governor's appointment secretary and his office, and then the Bar Association also quizzes their members on potential on applicants for the judge, and they use that to make their recommendation.
Is that the local bar association or the state bar?
That's a local bar association.
That's what
correct.
I figured, because here's another issue that I think you're going to be coming up against when trying to make the bench more responsive, is that professional organizations like the local bar association are going to be an obstacle to that, because they're part of the establishment, and
that's a great question and a great issue. So what happens is Joe Smith wants to be a judge, and so Joe Smith's name is submitted to the bar, and anybody who's a member of the bar can say, oh, he's great or he's bad. Joe Smith can also go to his friends at Local 707, or the supervisor, or the member of the Republican Central Committee or the Democratic Central Committee, and say, write a letter for me, or he can go to his friends and ask them to support. But the general public has no idea.
Exactly.
Anybody who's been mistreated by this guy, they can't respond. So the access is only to the insiders, members of the bar, and the friends of and associates of the applicant. The rest of the public has zero input here, and generally doesn't even know who's being considered. That's a violation of transparency, in our opinion. It would be useful to know. We heard about one of the particularly bad judges in San Francisco was up for an appointment to a higher judicial office, and we got wind of it from a member of the bar, and submitted a letter to the governor, and that applicant was not selected. But that's just pure happenstance and luck. This shouldn't be a closed process that is opaque and not transparent, and the public is excluded from.
Because ultimately we're talking about judges that get appointed. They don't have that much public attention put on them, and those judges again are also a big part of the administration of the local courts. They don't not just in terms of so they make the superior court's policies with regards to, say, what nonprofits they contract with for, say, pretrial diversion or other other types of services, etc. And
all that's true. Yes. That's mostly in the hands of the presiding judge and the court staff, but all the judges have a say in deciding who the presiding judge is and who the assistant presiding judge is going to be, and they can have some impact on all those policies. Absolutely true. Yes.
Exactly. Okay. So I was going to say, how much time do you have, Frank? Would you be willing to? I don't know if anyone has We haven't had any requests for questions, have we?
A few in the comments that I've already stated. But you know, there's so much going on in the city right now that it's so frustrating for me to watch, because I just don't feel like, I mean, I not that I didn't warn people during the election about all the conflicts and things that Lurie was going to have, which we're clearly seeing now, but I just don't feel like a nonprofit guy trying to get his buddies to pay for homelessness is going to solve people getting stabbed randomly at a bus stop. It goes so much deeper and needs to go so much higher than that. And so I guess my biggest fear right now is that these types of crimes are going to increase because the judges are just willy-nilly letting people out. Like I said, judges do have the most power. Brooke Jenkins can scream and scream that someone should be kept in, or her various prosecutors. But if the public defender, who in San Francisco, again, has more power than in most counties, they're very powerful here. And most judges are former public defenders. As long as they're in cahoots and yes, you've taken, at least now we don't have 3 public defenders when you go to court with the removal of Chesapeake. But, no matter how hard Brooke Jenkins' team struggles to keep these people in jail, or, even, for example, Xavier Blue Wright, when he was at Napa in the hospital for a year while this case wound through the mental health court. And at his hearing, the first thing out of the public defender's mouth is, we request that he be released on his own recognizance. Well, this, is decided. And the judge, to his credit, looked at the paperwork and said, well, he's on his meds and he's doing fine where he is, so let's just leave him there. But as soon as it resolved, he was put at Baker Places, and, and he's been seen in the marina.
Right.
And, and this is, by the way, the husband of our managing editor. So as a journalist, I've been writing about the case, which I, have written about many of these type of cases. But when it affected me personally, I thought, well, this has, sort of a even bigger story attached to it. Because I have been watching and writing about the justice system for a very long time. And so, I've been able to ask the questions and see the emails, and it's just, it feels very hopeless. I mean, there's, the second part of my column is about my interview with Raphael Mandelman, the president of the Board of Supervisors. And in that article, if you want to get even more depressed, you read about why he says there's really nowhere to put these people and no money to spend. So if Daniel Lurie really wants to do something big and important, he should have his wealthy brethren and, pals, build some mental institutions with locked beds, because until that happens, this is going to keep happening.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's really important to emphasize. And, when we talk about people being put into current beds like Baker Places, for instance, that's not a locked bed. It's, the guy can go in and out whenever he wants to.
Yep.
And invariably he's, they're going to do this. They're going to go back to doing their thing. Unless they're told or compelled not to.
And he'll just stop showing up. I mean, that's the thing that, one day you'll just hear about Xavier Blue Wright being arrested again. And next thing you know, he will be back in jail, and the whole revolving door starts again, and a new victim. And, the only thing that people can hope for is that he doesn't kill someone eventually. But, I can tell you that Ken Major's life is forever changed, physically and emotionally. They've lived in the marina a very long time. They took a break to move out of the area to spend time with some family after they sold their condo in the marina. But they miss San Francisco. It's where they're from. They moved back, and then this happens. So it makes it very hard, especially as, someone who's older. for him to justify staying in a city where he feels like he got zero. And I'm not saying that I can tell you from reviewing the emails and the exchanges that the district attorney's office and the victim advocates, they did work with Ken and do everything they could, but there's just a certain point in the justice system, the injustice system in San Francisco, where they just don't have the power they need to have to keep someone like Xavier and Blue Wright in prison or in a mental hospital.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think this is an ongoing problem and one that the media doesn't look at generally. So I thank you for shining a light on it.
There definitely does need to be a lot more attention on it, and that's something certainly that we're committed to.
Yes.
And certainly, in order to help us in that mission, and now it's time for our pitch after Frank has given his pitch, is to if you have not seen our website yet at thevoicesf.org, that is where we put our news. That is where all of our news reporting is. Right now, we're updating twice a week. We're hoping to update more often, and we can do that with your support. And if you are able to subscribe or support in other ways, there we have a couple of buttons on our website where you can do that. Is subscribe to our regular newsletter and otherwise donate at thevoicesf.org. And you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which comes out on Thursdays for free, or as part of your regular subscription, either way. And so we ask that you do that as well.
And yes, you can, it's 100% tax deductible. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. So you can make your donation and write it off on your taxes. But again, I donate to a lot of animal charities. And one of my favorites is Niall Harbison, who is on Twitter and Instagram. He saves street dogs in Thailand. And he always says, a $3 subscription to Instagram or to YouTube or to Twitter/X is, as he says, massively appreciated because it helps us to continue to do the things that we're doing here to save the dogs. And so I subscribe to him on all three channels. It's $10 a month. And, if everybody does that, it makes a big difference. So our hope is to get 2,000 subscribers at $10 a month this year. And if we can do that, that would be something that would sustain the voice to keep going. And of course, the larger endowments and grants help us to grow.
Indeed. So what's everybody?
If I get your emails already, that means I don't need to subscribe. I'm already subscribed. Is that right?
If you get the big one on Thursday, that's it. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and share with your friends. That's the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both for the voice and for Crime SF. When you get those emails, forward them, share them, and tell your friends to sign up so that they know what's going on out there.
Okay. We communicate with our members, our 4,500 members regularly. I assume we can put links to your articles on occasion, right?
Oh, anytime you want. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's almost 12:30.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd say have a great Sunday. This is what's going on in the following week. It's going to be interesting to see what we're going to be able to cover as both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors are on summer break. But there are some things happening this week. The MTA board is meeting. The commission streamlining commission task force is meeting. The homeless oversight commission is meeting this Thursday, and the ethics commission is meeting on Friday. So we'll see what interesting things come out of there. We'll be covering.
When is the MTA board meeting this week?
Yeah, it's Tuesday the 5th.
Got it.
And Thursday, I assume, at the homeless commission. That
is correct.
That's the one Kristen Evans is clawing to keep her position on.
Yes, she is. That is the one she is trying to keep her position on. I don't.
I can hardly wait.
I don't know if there'll be any discussion of that then. Although it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Board of Supervisors. They haven't recalendared her item for reappointment yet. So we'll see what happens.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, that's gonna be interesting. The other thing I discovered doing my research on another article about the women of the homeless industrial complex is, of course, that Kristen Evans sold her home in the Haight-Ashbury and paid cash for a rather palatial estate in Half Moon Bay. They still maintain a condo in San Francisco, but which they also paid cash for, by the way. So certainly she's an expert on homelessness. But but so the other question that is before the board now is if she even qualifies, besides having forgotten to refile and having a perfectly qualified candidate interested in the job. She is quite, it appears she no longer is a resident of San Francisco, which is required to be on a commission. So
that hasn't stopped Shimon Walton.
Well, that's true. I mean, he's definitely lives in Vallejo and yet is, still on the Board of Supervisors, a lame duck. But that's a whole nother issue is that our residency requirements are too easy.
Yeah, but guys, San Francisco has always been a city of stakeholders. So what can you do? Not necessarily residents.
Guys, I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much. And I want to thank the listeners. I see Doug and Stephen and Paul, who are friends listening, and I'm glad to see them all.
A bunch of familiar faces. Thanks for coming on and listening to us, and thank you very much for showing.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks, Frank, for all you guys are doing to keep the voters alert of what's happening.
Yep, thank you. Take
all
care.
Right, guys.
Thanks for giving us an opportunity. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great Sunday.